We just have to be willing, and if you'll open your heart this morning, the Lord will help you, I promise. Job chapter 1, verse number 13, we're going to read a little bit and see where the Lord would lead us. Verse number 13, and there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And there came a messenger unto Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the asses feeding beside them. And the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, the fire of God is fallen from heaven, hath burned up the sheep and the servants, and consumed them, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, the Chaldeans made out 3 bands and fell upon the camels and have carried them away, yea, and slain the servants with the edge of the sword. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness and smote the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. What a day. What a day that Job has experienced. If you will think back on the last few weeks, we talked about Job and how he was the kind of man that God would want us to be. That God himself said that there's none like him, that he's perfect, that he's upright, that he feareth God and escheweth evil. That is what God said about this man, which means it must be true. We learned that he was the greatest man, that his belongings, his livestock, his structures, his infrastructure that he would need would make him more like a city or its own civilization rather than a farmer that had some animals. He was the greatest in the East. There was nobody that was as great as him financially, that was as great as him spiritually. He was the ultimate individual. And then we looked at what happened behind the scenes. Things he didn't see that we were able to see because we have this wonderful Bible in front of us. We saw that Satan was called to the presence of God and that they had a conversation, and that God suggested to Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job? And Satan said, well, your servant Job is protected. You have built a hedge about him and his family and everything that he's got. Satan also says that the only reason, and these are in my words, and the only reason that Job loves you and fears you and does what you want him to do is because you've blessed the pudding out of him. That's why. Ain't got nothing to do with nothing else. Because you've blessed him beyond measure. It ain't got nothing to do with his heart. It has to do with how much you've done for him. So what Satan is saying, he says, doth Job fear God for naught? That's what he's saying. No reason. Only reason that he does this is because you've taken care of him. You've blessed the work of his hand. His substance has increased. He's the greatest because of your blessing, and that's the only reason he's doing this. So, we finished up last week with verse 12, and the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he hath is in thy power. God gives Satan power over everything in his life. Only upon himself put not forth thine hand. The only thing Satan couldn't do was touch Job's life. He could touch everything else. So we get to this fateful day in Job's life. Could you imagine what Job is going through? I went outside this morning and went to get in my truck and leave. When I wanted to leave, my wife and I don't ride to church together because it's better for the church that way. And I went outside, my truck wouldn't crank up. And I was full of joy. And had to go back in and say, I got to ride with my family. And my wife and daughter are wonderful and amazing, and they fill me with joy, and they want to get to church at 10 o'clock, and I want to be here at 9:45. Anyway, so I was frustrated. I've been frustrated because I had to jump my truck off every day this week because we didn't have payday till yesterday, and batteries are expensive. My truck takes 2, which means it's doubly expensive. So anyway, I get to poor pitiful me's because my truck won't start, and we're preaching on Job, and I'm like, yeah, I'm a dummy. And but ain't that how we get? Yep. Things don't work. We came into church this morning. Miss Nada sent me a message because she didn't know I was riding with my wife, but I wasn't here when she got here because she gets here early. Thank you, Miss Nada, for always being here early. And she said the heat's not working in the sanctuary. And I was like, yes. You know? And is that not life? That's life. Bible don't tell you that when you love Jesus, life's going to be easy. It actually tells you the opposite. So why do we get mad when things don't go right? Speaking of myself, if everybody else is holy, that's fine. I'm not. I struggle with these things. There are seasons in life when things unravel slowly. You can see it coming. You see the drought coming. Anybody that does any farm work, you see the drought. You look at the forecast and you know at some point in time the grass is going to be gone. And then there's a season in life when things happen all at once. I've been there in the farming world. You go out there, everything's good, and then you go out there the next day and you're pulling calves, and mama cows are getting sick, and you deal with foot rot, and it's just everything's happened all at one time, and you lose cows in one day, and that's a small illustration, but that's how it happens. We went through a period of time like this in our lives. We had 4 insurance claims in about 6 months at our house. Things fell apart on us real quick. We're still dealing with some of the issues that were never actually fixed, and fought battles and struggles, and it's just one thing after another. You hear the news, you realize what's going on, you go sit down to try to process it, and you're hit with something else. There are days when trouble seems to trickle into life, and you can think about it, process it, pray about it, and deal with it a little better. But then there's days when everything explodes all at once. Job chapter 1 records one of the darkest days ever lived by a man that loved God. The man that was perfect. He wouldn't pay him for sin. He was perfect. Scripture does not soften the blow. He didn't have the Bible. He don't have what we have. He didn't know about the conversation. I'm talking about tragedy stacks upon tragedy, stacks upon tragedy. And we don't even really understand the weight of this tragedy in the lives that we live. Nobody in here understands the weight of this. In a matter of moments, Job loses wealth and workforce and his future financial security and then his family all at one time. I'm talking about the servant is talking to him, and before that servant finishes speaking, another one comes up. More tragedy. Behind these tragedies is an invisible enemy to Job. Job don't know about the conversation. I can't help you understand that enough. Job don't understand. He don't know that God has said, my servant Job is perfect. Try him and see. He don't know that. Satan is not trying to take Job's possession. He's trying to take his faith. He's trying to get him to curse God. Yeah, that's what he's trying to do. God wants us to understand something. Faith is most often not tested by one loss, but by many losses. Our faith is not strengthened until we have nothing else to lean on except for our faith. One of Satan's greatest tactics that he still uses today is that if you can believe, if he can get you to believe that God is punishing you, that God has left you, that God does not love you, then he can steal your faith. If he can steal your faith, then you have nothing. He wants you to withdraw from the one that you need to get close to. That's what he wants. This passage reveals how Satan attacks us, the people of God, and what real faith looks like. And also shows us how that something can fall apart and how everything can fall apart in one day. First thing I want to notice this morning is just a general overview of the day. Satan attacks suddenly. This day begins like any other day. If you go back to verse 4, his sons and daughters were feasting, and verse 5 is what we focused on our first sermon, that we need to be praying for our children, because Job's number one priority was his children. Praying for his children. Sacrificing for his children. But we find in verse 4 that this is what his children were doing. Well, what are they doing in verse 13? Same thing they do every day. They live in the dream. It's normal life. No ominous signs, no spiritual alarms, nothing. You need to know that disaster does not announce itself to your life. Disaster doesn't walk up in your life, knock on the door and say, hey, I just want you to know I'm moving in for a little while. You just need to get ready. No, that's not how it works. Job had no warning. There was no forecast. There was no gradual decline. It goes something like this. And there was a day. Isn't that every day? We wake up and there was a day. Ecclesiastes 9:11 says, time and chance happeneth to them all. Every day we take a chance at something that we have no idea. Don't say I'll do it tomorrow. We ain't promised tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen to you tomorrow. Tomorrow could be a great day, or tomorrow could be a Job-like day. How we deal with it is what determines what all happens. I feel like that God is using these situations to get us where he wants us. We spend a lot of time on the furnace talking about that the silversmith spends time keeping that silver in the center of the fire, the hottest part of the fire, until he thinks it's as pure as it can be. That's why these things happen. From the human side of things, it looks like it's just one bad day, but the spiritual side of things, we already know Satan's had permission, but Job didn't know that. Notice the sequence here. One messenger runs in. Verse 15, and he says he's the only one that's escaped. The animals are gone. Everybody else is dead. He's the only one that escaped. What does the next verse say? While he was yet speaking. While he was yet speaking. While he was yet speaking. And another thing, and another thing, and another thing. No recovery time. No emotional processing. Just relentless attack on his life. Why does Satan attack this way? Well, because shock weakens our stability. Our faith is weakened when it's the shock and awe effect, when we don't see it coming and we can't even process what just happened, when something else hits us. We ask ourselves questions like, why is all this happening at once? What have I done wrong? God is against me. You ever had something happen and it's so amazing that you're like, the only way this happened is if this was God's will and it's divine that it happened in my life, but it's not beneficial? And you think, oh my God, why is this happening? I'm going to tell you something. The book of Job should teach us a lot of things. But one of the first things we should understand is that the calm conditions in our life are not permanent. That's what you need to know. And you also need to know is that if you're living the perfect life for Christ, that does not exclude you from the turmoil that could happen in your life. Faith needs to rest in God, not any circumstances. It don't matter what's going on in your life. Our faith is not affected by circumstance. And you don't need to think that just because everything in the world has happened wrong to you is because God is abandoning you. Maybe He's wanting to get closer to you. I'm going to tell you, if you'll put some thought into it, you'll do some reading, you'll do some studying, you'll find that the most faithful believers with the strongest faith are attacked the hardest. Now, I'm not saying that all the bad in your life is because God is trying to strengthen you. Sometimes we're having to lay in the bed we made. We made bad decisions. We got to deal with the consequences. But if you're living for Jesus and you're doing everything in your power and one thing after another happens, maybe God's trying to show you something. What did I say last week when I was talking? I said maybe when I was talking about this, all this calamity in his life, that maybe we need to start thinking about asking ourselves, God, what are you wanting to show me, rather than why are you doing this to me? It's the same question, but it's a total different outcome. Let's look at this first attack. The first wave, the Sabaeans. Verse 14, then there came a messenger unto Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the asses feeding beside them. Verse 14 shows us structure and order and blessing. The oxen were primarily used for heavy labor, and he had a bunch of them. He didn't have one. Most families have one. What did he have? He had 500 yoke of them. He had 1,000 oxen, and they were working. They were being productive. They were pulling plows. They were preparing fields. These donkeys were grazing beside them. What does that mean? Well, these donkeys, they were valuable for transportation. They were productive. It talks about the females, because females are reproductive. So this is a sign of abundance and reproduction. So long-term profit, long-term growth in a financial situation. They were a sign of trade. Donkeys were grazing. What does that mean? That means they were living the life of abundance. The donkeys were just out grazing, and the oxen were plowing. Is that different than any other day? Not for Job. It shows order, structure, blessing, prosperity. That's what's going on in Job's life. This is a picture of production agriculture, economic stability. He's being a responsible steward of what God has given him. and he is making sure that his future is taken care of financially. That's what it is. See, Job wasn't lazy, nor was he living off past wealth. He was operating for the future. He was not wasting today. Can't find a hole in what Job was doing. That's what I'm trying to tell you here. Verse 15. And the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Job, what is Job probably doing? Well, you got to go back to verse 5. What does he spend the majority of his day doing? Sacrificing, praying for his kids. Job is probably worshiping right now, and somebody comes up and has to interrupt him. You mean to tell me that Job is worshiping God and God's allowing this to happen? Absolutely. Absolutely. Verse 5 lays the foundation for what Job did every single day. He spent a lot of time in prayer and in worship. The servant comes and tells him, this is sudden catastrophe. The animals were peacefully working and disaster struck. Nothing appeared wrong. This is the theme of Job in chapter 1 and chapter 2 we'll get to. Trials often come without warning, even when you're in the middle of God's will. What am I trying to get to you? I'm trying to tell you that you don't need to beat yourself up or have a pity party when things ain't going your way. Maybe God's trying to show you something. This also demonstrates, verse 14 and 15 together demonstrates what Satan likes to target in your life. He wants to target your productivity. Because if you feel like you're not productive, what do you feel? You feel worthless. He destroyed the oxen, which crippled farming. He took the donkeys, or took the oxen, took the donkeys. That's commerce. Killed the servants. No manpower. He went from having two forms of financial support and futures that went away. Satan wants to strike a place where you're being the most fruitful. That's what he wants to do. John 10:10, the thief cometh not but to steal and to kill and to destroy. That's what Satan wants to do. Destroy. Destroy what? Everything. If the enemy can disrupt your usefulness, then he weakens your spirit and your testimony. That's what he wants to do. Now, who were the Sabaeans? Well, at this time, they were aggressive people from Arabia. Probably, if you look at it today, it's near where Yemen is. They were known for raiding caravans and settlements. They were opportunistic. They were attackers. They were marauders. They gained their wealth through this type of attack. They were violent. They were the type of people who would see prosperity and go attack it. That's what kind of people they were. Why is this significant? Now I want to ask you a question. Why have they never attacked Job before? Well, the answer is because they couldn't. Because he had a hedge of protection. They couldn't get to him. Does it say that Job had an army that protected him? Does not ever mention an army that Job had. It said he had servants, not soldiers. So it was not because he had an army. It was because it was God's will. God had a hedge of protection about him. Job had never experienced this in his life. So why now? Well, what's the first way that Satan wanted to attack Job? He wanted Job to be in shock because this has never happened to me before. He wanted Job to be in shock because we just took his ability to produce and his ability to trade and the ones that could work. It was caused by evil men making evil choices. But Job is probably thinking, God, why in the world are you letting this happen to me? I know I would be. See, we got to remember Satan has been given power, verse number 12, all the power. Satan was orchestrating the attack. Here's what you need to know. Satan uses people, they don't even realize it, as tools of evil in your life. And I'm gonna say something else, and you might not agree with me, and that's fine. Satan can wiggle his way into a Christian's life and use them to hurt you. I'm just telling you. Why do they say that church hurt's the worst hurt? Because it's true. You get hurt by somebody that you believed was your brother or sister in Christ. And all it takes is a little bit of weakness for evil to get a foothold in your life, for evil to be able to use you on your own brother or sister in Christ. I'm going to tell you something. Not everyone who hurts you is serving the devil. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying it's possible. We got scripture for it right here. But I'm going to tell you this. The evil in this world has no problem leveraging jealous folks, greedy folks, violent folks, wicked people, and even good people that's having a bad day to hurt you. You don't need to forget that our ultimate battle is not against the folks in this world. When people attack you, you need to look beyond the human to the spiritual conflict that you're dealing with. Satan is attacking Job first by taking his oxen and his donkeys, and it says right here, I don't want you to miss this part. It says, and the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them away. Talking about the oxen and the asses. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword. There's two ideas here about the edge of the sword. Now, the Bible uses this term in a lot of places, the edge of the sword. But it says here that they have slain these servants with the edge of the sword. So we can look at this as just a brutal murder of his servants. Or you can look at it as the servants being lined up, the edge of the sword being put on their neck, and them cutting their heads off. Execution style. What is going to give the greater effect? However they were killed, it was brutal and it was ugly, and these were people that were not armed. They had no idea what just happened to them. So Job lost 1,000 oxen, 500 female donkeys, and all the servants that go along with them. Somewhere probably around 45 to 50 servants. These servants had families. Something that y'all need to understand, that you need to quit thinking about Job having a house and a barn and a bunch of land. We're talking about an establishment. We're talking about a great civilization around Job. See, all these servants had families, and those families had to have housing, and that housing had to have land, and the servants that took care of the oxen probably lived around the oxen. And if there's only one person left to tell the story, that means that not only did the servants die, the families died. Everybody was killed. So Job is being told that you have just lost your production agriculture and your future trade and your future wealth, but now people that trusted you with their lives are dead. All these people. And Job is like, so can you say that one more time? I ain't got time to say it one more time. Why? Well, what's verse 16 say? While he was yet speaking, the servant had not got finished saying what he wanted to say. There came also another and said, the fire of God is fallen from heaven. Fire of God fallen from heaven. And hath burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them. What does that mean? There's nothing. It's bare dirt. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Now, how many sheep we talking about here? We're talking about 7,000 sheep. Now, in our day, we can stock a rate of about 8 to 10 sheep per 1.5 acres. That's what they recommend these days. You can put 10 to 12 if you've got really good ground, but we're talking about average ground here, modern day. Where are these folks at? They're in a place where they have drought half the year. You think their ground's as good as ours producing grass? No, it's not. So if you want to do the math on it, 7,000 sheep, 7 head per acre on a very productive way. We're talking about 1,000 acres of land. We're talking about 7,000 sheep, probably 100 servants, and 1,000 acres has been burned to nothing like that. Fire of God from heaven. Now, stay with me. Job is probably worshiping when he's interrupted the first time. What does he do every single day? He wakes up early in the morning and he sacrifices for every single kid. Takes a while to perform that sacrifice. You think Satan said, well, I think I'll let him get done worshiping. We'll wait till after lunch to do this. No. I think he's probably got the altar built, about to make a sacrifice, and the first one comes. He is in the process of worship. The first one comes and tells him what happened. And he ain't done talking to him yet. He's not done talking yet. And the next one comes and says that while he was yet speaking, there came another also and said, the fire of God. The fire of who? Fire of God is fallen from where? Where's he worshiping to? To heaven. Who's he worshiping to? God. And hath burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them. He just lost 7,000 sheep, and I don't know, we could go 50 to 100 servants, plus their families, plus the structures, plus the grass. Bare dirt. All at one time. Now, what do sheep represent here? Sheep represents the ability to worship. What does he do every day? Every day he sacrifices. Every day. He has the ability to do that because he has the sheep. The sheep are gone. So he's processing ox, donkeys, servants dead, fire of God from heaven. Hold up now. Fire of God, yes, fire of God from heaven. Burned up all the sheep. All 7,000, everything is gone. It's bare ground over there. The servants too, yes, there is nobody alive but me. So we're talking about 50 to 100 servants, every one of them having 3 to 5 in their family. So we're talking about 250 to 500 people dead like that. 7,000 sheep gone, bare ground. And he ain't even got finished talking to the first guy about what happened to the oxen and the donkeys and those servants. Have you had a bad day? Well, you might have, but it ain't like Job's. See, the second wave of attack that Satan puts on you is the fire of God. Now, what do we think this is? Could it have been fire? It could have very well been fire that fell from heaven. We don't know. The servant said this. We like to think of it probably as lightning. Lightning falls, because that's something we can kind of understand. But it could have been fire from heaven. How big was this fire from heaven to consume 1,000 acres, plus the structures, plus the animals. Could you imagine the fire? Like you talking about fire? We see lightning hit, and it's an amazing thing, right? Lightning hits, burns something up. How big of a fire or lightning was this to consume 1,000 acres like that? Probably an amazing sight. Now, why did the servant say the fire of God fell from heaven? Because there ain't nothing else that has the ability to do that but God. Now, let's back up a little bit. The servant don't know the story, and Job don't know the story. Now we do. We know that Satan has been given authority. He's been given authority over nature, over the clouds, over the lightning, over fire, over the elements. But they don't know that. They know the only one that ought to be able to do that's God. The fire of God is fallen from heaven. We know something they don't. We know God permitted it, and Satan sent it. But they don't know that. Man, the sheep, you talking about my ability to worship, you talking about innocence, you talking about spiritual wealth, all gone. When the sheep were destroyed by the fire from God out of heaven, could you imagine what it felt like? You think Job is worried about the financial loss, or you think what's his only priority? Waking up early, sacrificing for his children. That's his priority. And what's on his mind? If he's not thinking about the fire of God that fell from heaven to consume the sheep, he's thinking about, how am I going to sacrifice for my kids? How am I going to be the priest in my home that I'm supposed to be? And then when he gets done thinking about that, he says, hang on now, let me back up. God did this to me? God sent fire. So is my sacrifice not good enough for God? Is the life that I've lived my entire life not good enough? God does not accept what I'm doing. You ever thought that? I took a step of faith when I left my old job before I started teaching. The week after I accepted the job, our lives got turned upside down. And I took that job because God told me this is what you're going to do, after I argued with him about it for a little while. And it took a step of faith, major faith. And the first thing that happened was our lives got turned upside down. And I said, hold up now, God. I did what me and you were supposed to be on the same page. Now, you said to do this. This is what I'm doing. And then you're going to do this to me? What do you think Job's thinking? I'm going to tell you something. You ain't never experienced what Job experienced. Not even a touch of it. I've never experienced what Job's experienced. He could no longer fulfill his role as a spiritual leader. God has taken his ability to worship. God has rejected him. God has taken his production agriculture, his ability to trade, his future, and now his worship. And he ain't even had enough time to breathe yet. Oh, and where are they at? More than likely, now this is me assuming, and that's okay, I'm assuming that he's standing at that altar he built that morning fixing a sacrifice. Yeah, that's where he's standing. I'm just telling you, when Satan attacks, he's trying to tear you apart on the inside by using what's on the outside. Here's the strategy. If Satan wanted it to appear like God did this, because if Job believes God is destroying him, Satan don't have to tempt Job to curse God. He's going to do it on his own. Pain will tempt him. Suffering will tempt him. One of Satan's oldest lies is God is against you. It was whispered in the Garden of Eden. And it was implied in Job, and it's still being suggested today. I promise you, if you're living for Jesus and you're trying to live a life that would please God, at some point in time, something bad's going to happen. And the first thing that's going to cross your mind is, God's against me right now. What have I done? When tragedy strikes, Satan wants you to say, why is God doing this to me? Why has God stopped loving me? What am I being punished for? It's the truth. Satan's greatest weapon is not destruction, it's deception. Deception of what? Your mind and who is in control. Because if you believe, like we're supposed to, that God's in ultimate control, then God's the one that's doing this to us. Yeah, well, we're leaving out a big part of what's going on here. If Satan can destabilize your faith, then he's got you. Remember we preached about the devil wants your head. He wants your head so he can get to your heart, so he can stop your hand. If he can mess with your faith, then he can mess with everything else. Your faith. We can't let our circumstances define God's character. You got to let Scripture define God's character. So Job, more than likely, is standing there ready to worship. And somebody comes and tells him, your ability to produce agricultural products is gone. What did he need to take care of all these animals? Well, he needed grains, and he needed to support his family and his servants' families and his empire. He had to have the oxen, his donkeys, the ability to trade, the futures of 500 females. The servants are gone. And then the fire of God fell from heaven, consumed the sheep. So his mind's still here. All this is gone. But you know what? His day's only halfway over. It's only halfway over. Only halfway. If y'all hang in there with me a few more minutes, we'll see what the Lord has for us. Verse 17, while he was yet speaking, there came also another and said. Now, listen. The first one's talking, he didn't get to finish. The next one interrupts him. And now we've had a third show up, and he interrupts the one that's talking about the sheep. Chaldeans made out 3 bands and fell upon the camels, and have carried them away, yea, and slain the servants with the edge of the sword. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. You see, Job's wealth was stripped away piece by piece by piece by piece. Prosperity. Camels represent prosperity and trade and future security. The camel is the most valuable thing monetarily that he has. It's more valuable than the sheep. It's more valuable than the oxen. It's more valuable than the donkeys. It's the most valuable thing that he's got. The loss of the camels signals that Job's future earning potential is gone. So think about it with me. Job, he has created a small, we'll call it an empire, I guess. And for him to have this empire, it does not say about him producing all the things that they need there. He's got to have trade. Job has got to trade. Well, how do you have trade at long distances? Well, your only vehicle for that in that day was camels. That was it. And Job had a bunch of them. Why did he have a bunch of them? Well, he had a lot of trading to do. The camels were the most valuable item, livestock-wise, that he had because of what they could do. Now, we've lost the ability to have production agriculture. We lost the ability of the trade and the short distance routes of using the donkeys. The servants are gone. It's all there's nothing there. It was a slaughter. And then all the sheep are burned up, and all that ground is like scorched earth, and there's nothing left but one servant from the first one servant from the next one. And while that one's talking, this one shows up and says that the Chaldeans made out 3 bands. Now, who are these folks? Well, they're a fierce group of people from Mesopotamia. This is Babylon. They are historically known for their military skill, organized raids, strategic warfare. They're not random thieves. This was calculated. This was planned. Camels, you don't just go out there and catch the camel. Okay, now they might have got the oxen because they're submissive animals. Donkeys are a little less submissive than oxen. But the camels, you don't just go out there and grab a camel. You grab a camel, it's going to throw you off somewhere. They had to have some structure. They had to be strategic. It said 3 bands. 3 bands is a coordinated, planned, intentional attack. Now, what does this tell me? Well, I think that they had been trying to do this, making plans to do this, but wasn't able to do it. Why? Hedge of protection. God had a hedge of protection around them. The Sabaeans may have looked like they were just opportunistic, right? They were just marauders. They were just happened to be going by and saw this situation and attacked them. But this was like a military strike. This was organized. This tells me that I think that if you go back to what Satan said about Job, when he was talking to God, that he's protected, he knew there was hedges. Why? Because he'd probably done tried to get him already. And I think this organized attack had already been planned and possibly tried to be executed, but they couldn't get through the hedge. God took down the hedge. He gave Satan the authority to do this. This was not bad luck. This was the evil in this world strategy to increase the intensity of Job's suffering. That's what's going on right here. You need to earn something right here, and I'm going to wrap up. We ain't done, but I'm going to wrap up. Here's a spiritual principle you need to understand. When one attack doesn't break you, don't think that it's over. There's going to be another. And there's going to be another one. And there's going to be another one. And there's going to be another one. And there's no end to it. Satan likes to multiply the pressure. You ever been going through something with family, having family stress, things not going right? Maybe you got that one sibling that's got a bad case that can't get rights, and you got to worry about them all the time. And then while that's happening, then you have financial stress. Something happens, and now you don't have the ability to do what you need to do, help take care of your family, and you're like, what in the world's going on? And then you get sick, and you can't take care of your family or your sibling can't get rights because your finances are poured into something that's going on that you can't understand, and now you're sick from it. What about that? And then, because all that, your spouse goes through some emotional stress and can't figure out why you just can't be happy, and you're trying to figure out what's going on in life. Am I painting a picture for you? Anybody know what I'm talking about? What I'm saying is that you're not going to have just one. It's going to multiply. One, and then we're going to multiply it by something else, and then we're going to multiply it by something else. See, Job, he didn't just lose oxen. He lost that. The oxen were a multiplication factor in his life. Because of the oxen, he could do this and this and this and this. And now that's gone. The donkeys, same thing. Servants, same thing. Layer upon layer, because sustained pressure can shake your faith. Satan's after your faith. That's what he's after. You need to remember this. Satan can organize attacks, but he has limitations. He's powerful, but he's not sovereign. And the Bible tells us, and I'm telling you, we get bent out of shape about it. I'm speaking for myself here. We get bent out of shape when things ain't going right for us, and it's in the Bible that things ain't going to go right for us. Psalms 34:19, many are the afflictions of the righteous. What does that mean? Many are the afflictions of the righteous. What does that mean? Many are the afflictions of the righteous. There ain't no way around it. That's what it says. But we want to say, God, why are you doing this to me? Because many are the afflictions of the righteous. But the Lord delivereth him out of them all. There's deliverance coming out of all of them if we don't give up before it's over with. Carly, why don't you play something for me? Listen, Job's empire. We're talking about stuff. We're talking about livestock. Job's empire. We ain't got to his family yet. We're talking about stuff. 7,000 sheep. Probably, I don't know, 1,000 acres minimum for us today. It could be as much, in my research of how many head per acre, we calculated how many head per acre here. Sometimes there, it's acres per head. So we're talking about, is it 1,000 acres? Is it 7,000 acres? We don't know. 30 to 40 shepherds, 20 to 30 folks that supported those shepherds. See those shepherds, those servants that were shepherds, they just shepherd. Well, don't they have to have folks that shear? Don't they have to have folks that clean up areas? And don't they have to have folks that supported the shepherds? Needed blacksmiths, needed folks that worked leather, needed folks that did stuff with the wool. I'm talking about we got a full-on production system here. We could be looking at 50 to 100 servants with the sheep that would multiply 3 to 5 people per household, 250 to 1,000 people that got burned up by the fire of God that fell from heaven. Job didn't just lose livestock. Sheep were his ability to worship. The servants that depended on him for life died. He's carrying the burden, the weight of their death on him. The oxen, 1,000 of them. We're talking about, 20 to 40 servants. Multiply that out by the family members that were there, the donkeys. It's about the same. 20, 25 to 40 times the 3 to 5 people. We're talking about as many as 500 to 1,000 people died on what? The edge of the sword. All gone. Camels, big areas of land here. More handlers per head versus the other animals. 75 to 120 handlers for the camels. That's not counting like the overseers, the caravan people, the craftsmen, the household servants, the apprentices, the family members. How many people actually died that day? I'm going to say it's in the thousands. Job lost every bit of his future. He lost his ability to trade. He lost his ability to produce. He lost his ability to worship. He had thousands of people's deaths were on him. That's how many people lived under Job's authority. He's standing at the altar when he finds this stuff out. Could you imagine? Standing at the altar, finding this stuff out. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me what Job endured that day. I'm going to skip ahead a few verses here. We just finished verse 17. I want to skip ahead a little bit. Now, when my truck wouldn't crank this morning, I wanted to kick rocks and pitch a fit. Just being honest with you, I did. Which I've been doing it all week, so I knew what I was wanting to do already. I went out there thinking it wasn't going to crank because I hadn't been cranking. Anyway, does it say that Job kicked rocks and pitched a fit? What about when I've had the loss of calves on my farm, or had to bury a horse, or when we had a lot of goats over the years? I'm relating to the farmer side of things. The loss of one hurts. Job lost 7,000 plus 3,000 plus 1,000 plus 500. One day, boom, it's gone. Do you understand? I'm having a conversation. This one's telling me something before he's done talking. Another one comes up right here, and he's talking before he's done. Another one comes up here. I'm talking in a matter of 30 seconds, his empire is gone. And Job does what? I know what I would do. Well, I really don't. It would not be what Job does. I would pitch the worst fit that you've ever seen in your life. I'm good at fit pitching. That's one of my greatest talents. I mean, I'm really good at it. I like hitting stuff and kicking stuff. Y'all are thinking, what, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, I'm just being honest with you. I have to tell my son all the time, son, don't do what I do. Learn from this, okay? What's Job do? Verse 20. Then Job arose. I ain't got time to preach this. Job arose. There's action in this. Job arose. So what does that mean? That means that he was right here. Where was he at to start with? He was at the altar. He was at the altar. So Job was on his knees this whole time. People telling him all this stuff's going on. Job is on his knees at the altar when he finds out this. So he had to stand up because he was about to, or in the process of worshiping God. Rent his mantle, which is a sign of suffering. His mantle would be his outer robe. He grabbed it and pulled it apart. That is historically a sign of suffering and heartache. Rightly so. Rightly so. Shaved his head. So if you dig into it a little bit, the long hair on the head and the long hair on the face is a sign of wisdom and abundance and fullness and all those things. But he wanted to look like, I know nothing and I have nothing. Which is probably why my head's shaved, but not my face. Anyway, so he shaved his head. It's a sign of suffering. Hang on now, what does it say now? And fell down upon the ground and worshiped. So what did he do? He's on his knees worshiping. All this stuff happened. He stood up. He rent his mantle. He shaved his head, and he went right back to the altar and worshiped. Where are you at this morning? I didn't worship this morning at my little bitty problem. I rolled my eyes and said, well, that's about right. Being smart, Ellie. That's where I was at this morning. Where are you at this morning when things didn't go your way? What's Job trying to teach us right here? Verse 21, and said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Hold up now. You serious? Yeah, I'm serious. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job is trying to teach us something. And this is the point of all the suffering. And I ain't even got to the worst part of the suffering yet. The Lord, I came in here naked, I'm going back naked. The Lord gave me everything, the Lord takes it away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Verse 22, in all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. How many times do we say, God, you're wrong for doing this to me? Job didn't do that. Job was worshiping. His worship was interrupted. He stood up in mourning and fell back on his face and worshiped. I can't do it. I'm just being honest with you. I don't have it in myself to do it. But we that are saved have the Holy Spirit inside of us that gives us the ability to worship in suffering.
Yes.
If you're going through something this morning, we have a place of worship. We have an altar. We have a place of worship. If you're going through something, if you want to make your suffering seem like it's not as big of a deal as it really is, if you'll worship through it, it'll help you. You want to find some peace? You feel like, God, I can't see him, I can't hear him, can't reach him. Well, it says that he inhabiteth the praises. You get down here and worship a little bit, I promise he'll come visit with you. Praise and worship. You talking about you want me to praise and worship when everything in my life's going wrong? Yeah. That's what Job did. And I don't know how long we're going to be in Job, but if you flip to the end of Job, because he didn't charge God foolishly, because he worshiped, Job had an amazing occurrence in his life. We get bent out of shape about stuff that ain't that big of a deal, but Job had this crazy thing happen to him. Crazy thing happened. Job 42:12 says, so the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than the beginning. More. How much more? Well, about double. He had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, 1,000 she-asses. He had also 7 sons and 3 daughters. That would be 10 on earth, 10 in heaven. What about that? And then, after this, lived Job 140 more years and saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. God's purpose for suffering is worship. I know we don't think about it that way. But if we would accept the suffering and use it to fuel our worship, it would change our life. I'll come pray this morning.